Welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Suzy Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hi there. Welcome back to the show. We have a really exciting interview ahead of us about being a corporate dropout who suffered from burnout and did a total turnaround. So exciting. Today, you'll be meeting Mary Struzinsky, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who coaches women of any age on how to eliminate stress, overwhelm, and burnout so it doesn't ruin their health and relationships. So welcome to the show, Mary. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
I am too. I know we're going to have a great conversation about your personal midlife entrepreneur story. I love hearing those. And we're going to be talking about your business, what's going well, and what also, what midlife issues might be popping up and getting in your way to some extent and might be challenging you in your life and maybe your business as a business owner. So let's start off with you telling us about how old you are, how long you've been an entrepreneur, what your journey was like, and what you do. Take it away.
Well, it was funny because I think the first time you asked me this, I had to do the math because I couldn't remember how old I was. And I always say, yeah, that's a sign of how old you are is when you don't remember anymore, right?
Count on fingers and toes.
Exactly. So I turned 56 in January.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. And yeah, I think that's maybe one of the most interesting things about my story is that at this age, I think a lot of people feel as though, gee, isn't it too late to start over? And I'm proof that it's not too late to start over, which I think is really exciting.
Agree. I totally agree.
I knew early on that I wanted to be a social worker. I was very goal oriented. So it was a pretty smooth process in terms of that's what I want to do. College went right into that, went right for my master's, immediately got licensed. And I did a lot of different things originally with my degree in terms of in the mental health field. Worked in the emergency rooms, did private practice, worked in residential group homes. But my specialty has always been trauma. And so I originally started off working with youth that were in specialized foster care. And I ended up with this company that was a mom and pop and worked my way up. And 2 decades later, found myself as a state and executive director of a national human service agency. And I loved it, but we eventually got bought out by another corporation. And as time went on, my responsibilities just grew and grew. And I didn't even realize what was happening to me. I was working, I can't even count how many hours. That's how many hours it was. I mean,
wow.
I can't even say like 60 or going to bed at 2 a.m. and then getting 3-4 hours of sleep and getting back up, traveling. If there was a while when we were growing that I was spending every week in another town about 3 hours from here and would live from a hotel for 3 days and then travel back. And so then when COVID hit, I thought, okay, maybe this is an opportunity to control that a little bit. And instead, what happened was I actually was working more. I didn't even think that was possible.
Oh my God.
I think there was something about being at home. People felt like they had access to you all the time. And I was right there by the computer. And I was getting extremely sleep deprived. But even before that, and we can kind of circle back around to this, but I had started having some health issues pop up. And I didn't listen originally. And so they continued to pop up. And you would think that that would have been enough for me to say, I need to take a look at what's going on in my life. And it wasn't. And so during that time, my son-in-law and daughter were living with us because of COVID. So they were trapped in our basement. That's a whole other story. But I guess it worked out well because now they're married. So, but honestly, the big thing was that my son-in-law's father had been an ambassador at one point in time. And he looked at me one day and he said, my father ran an entire country. And I think he worked You work more than he ever did. And that
Mm.
just shocked me. And so it was actually that comment that really made me take a look at what was going on with myself. And I was able to finally make the decision to leave that environment. I went back to private practice, which I thoroughly loved. And in that work, I was really working with women who had issues with codependency, trauma, again, because people knew that was my specialty. But time and time again, I was watching how burnout was playing out in their lives. And I was
Hey, I
watching.
have to interrupt you a
Yeah.
second, Mary, because I'm
Yeah.
looking at your notes and you did not just share something that was, I think, pretty shocking about your health. Do you want to share that?
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah.
very powerful.
Yes. So it originally started with me waking up one morning and I had a spot in my eye. I thought it was something in my eye and I didn't wear contacts or lenses or glasses. So I was like, And when I called the doctor's office, it's never good when they say, yeah, we think you need to come in. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I did. And that was a day I will never forget. They kept using the phrase, I think your listeners will appreciate this, but they kept using the phrase, well, a woman of your age. And I was still in my 40s at that time. And I'm just like, what does that mean? A woman of my age, But they thought that I had MS is what it was. And I will never forget sitting in the parking lot after that appointment, calling my husband hysterical. And my girls, I have 3 girls, all young at the time. And that's all I could think of was, let me just be able to still take care of my girls. But it ended up being an inflamed nerve in the brain. And I was very fortunate that it reversed and I didn't have any long lasting effects because sometimes it can affect your color. You're being able to see color in your peripheral vision. I didn't have that, fortunately. So that's what I was saying. That you think that experience in itself may have been enough to get me to look at my
Yeah.
behavior, and it wasn't.
Yeah, well,
um,
that's why I really wanted you to expand a little
yeah.
on it because I've heard this kind of story before. So, and you've probably now also
Yes.
seen it with clients. And this is why we really have to shine a spotlight on this because,
Yeah.
a logical person you'd think would say, oh my God, something's wrong here. But you were in such a state of your priorities being a little out of whack
Yes.
and autopilot functioning that you weren't thinking like you thought you would be thinking. And it's so common and it's so much related to burnout. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now take it away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I continue to have things about once a year. I would have some kind of, I had mono twice, I had shingles, I had frozen shoulder, and it always led back to inflammation, which in this time I have learned chronic stress leads to an immense amount of inflammation. Now, I did know as a trauma therapist that also we've discovered that having trauma early in life also can show up as inflammation later on in life. And I'm very pleased that medical doctors are now learning more about this and starting to ask their patients when they come in, have you had trauma earlier on in life? And I think I originally thought that that's what it was until I got to a point where I realized that I think it maybe has more to do with the chronic stress in my current life than things earlier on. And I think, Suzy, that there is more and more information now about burnout. But I think a lot of times it's from the standpoint of the employer and what does the employer need to do, which is fantastic. I'm not saying there's a problem with that. Obviously, they're in control of communication and education, and they can change the systems in their company so that it's better for their employees. But there isn't as many people talking about what could also be going on with the employee, with us internally, that we got ourselves into the situation, or that once we realize maybe it's not going to change, why do we stay in the situation? What is keeping us stuck there? What's happening that we're willing to tolerate that environment and risk our health and our relationships for this situation?
Yeah. Brilliant, powerful, huge question.
Yes. Yes. And you're right. I do see women come in all the time. And the thing that brings them to me is my health is failing. I've got some serious health issues now. And I'm realizing that it's not worth that. It's not worth losing my health, cutting my life short. And so then I really started watching how women who are in leadership, especially because I was, how this was playing out for them on a day to day basis. Women who would sit in their parking lot at work because they didn't want an employee seeing them leave before them. Just doing things like that, like you said, a rational person in their problem solving brain is going to think, that doesn't seem right. But at the time to them, it makes total sense. And so it really became more about our limiting beliefs that need to be perfect, comparing ourselves to others, that it's really those underlying issues that continue to drive women to stay in these unhealthy situations.
So, how did you shift from what you were doing to what you are doing?
Well, it started because of COVID, actually. My clients, I think, were beginning to feel more and more isolated. And of course, often I hear women say that they feel like they're the only ones who are experiencing this, or that there's something wrong with them that they're experiencing this. And COVID was really making that worse because people were not talking to each other and interacting with each other. So originally, it started off as a community of women sharing their experiences so I didn't want them to feel alone. And I wanted to normalize things for them a bit. And then it just really led from there, people wanting to work with me individually. And, the therapy practice, while I love it, there's something about coaching that I find it so exciting to be more future focused and forward focused. But I think one of the things for me that makes me a bit unique is that should I be working with someone in coaching and they find that they're stuck, there's something really blocking them from being able to take those tools and move forward. I have the skills to be able to say, okay, let's identify that and we can address it from a mindset perspective, but I can also help them to address it from more of a somatic perspective. What maybe is still going on in their nervous system that is blocking them. And so I just slowly made the decision to move to coaching. I got my own coach, mostly at the time because I was trying to figure out how to move a business from brick and mortar to online. And so it was a wonderful experience for me. And I continue to use the tools that I use from that coach every single day. It improved all areas of my life. And I think that's what my clients find now too, that just starting to work on one domain in their life, there's always overflow into the others as well, which is wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So what would you say is some of the challenges that you're facing with the way your role in your personal life is also changing as we age?
Yes. Well, when my children were little, especially toddlers, I think all moms at some point ask themselves that question, like, oh my gosh, like this is so hard. Like when is this stage going to be done? You think maybe when they get older, it'll be easier. And I realized that as my three girls are now young adults, I realized that no, the issues just change. They don't necessarily go away. And by that, I mean, I have one who is entering her last year of high school, but she's a dancer. She just dislocated her knee. And I had to be available for her because she had to have surgery and then there was recovery. And so, she was very independent and you think, yeah, she's good. And then all of a sudden she's not. So there is that. And then my oldest has since gotten married. She just bought a house about a month ago and moved in. And so it's still challenging, but exciting, but never boring. And so I really had to figure out, how do I make a structure for myself where I'm putting time into the business as well as the direct service piece, being a coach, and still being there for my family as well. And so I always tell my clients that knowing their why is extremely important in terms of getting through the hard times. And so it was really about remembering my why, which is that I actually wanted more time and more flexibility to have a quality relationship with my clients, but also have that time with my family. That's why I left corporate, was so that
Yeah.
I wasn't doing that 80 hours a week anymore.
Yeah. And in
So
fact, wanting more flexibility is one of the most common reasons that midlife women are looking for some kind of a change.
yes.
So flexibility for all kinds of reasons, but for sure, when you said direct service, I thought you were going to say direct service to my children. So it's really direct service to your children and to your clients.
Yes.
Yeah, so all that's a thing. And then the other thing you mentioned in your note is aging parents. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that is affecting your ability to run your business the way you want to?
Yeah, both my husband and I have family that's very far away. 10 hours is the closest. And so as we age, it's also processing that they are also aging and noticing things in terms of their memory, being worried about them, trying to decide when something happens, do I stay here? Do I go there? So that's a difficult decision. And my husband actually lost his father recently from a brain tumor, and he's an only child. So there's a lot of responsibility on him getting their house ready to be sold so his mom could move closer to family. So you definitely feel like you are that sandwich. You're in the middle and you have children that need you and then aging parents that need you as well. It can be quite
Yeah.
demanding. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can. And I wanted to specifically ask you about, you mentioned, being very strategic about spending time with your family and that being your why. Did you make any kind of strategic decisions with your calendar, or what did you do to secure some of that time?
Absolutely. It really started there for me. It was about, what is my why, and always reminding myself of where I'm trying to go, and that has to be priority, because it's very easy for us to let distractions get in the way.
Oh, yeah.
And fear, our brain does not like new things, and it's going to throw fear in our direction. And distraction is a wonderful way to deal with that fear. So I really set aside what I call CEO time. And that is time that I have really committed, and it has to be sacred for me in terms of looking big picture at my business and what I'm trying to achieve, as well as doing the same for the other important things in my life. And this is something I work on with my clients. And I almost look at the week. I actually start with the year. So I plan a year out. If it changes, that's okay. But I actually put things like medical appointments on like before. Those now I go ahead and schedule right at the get-go. But do I have time alone with my husband? Do we have family time? Do I have alone time? And so those are the things that I carve out at the beginning of the week. My husband and I sit down, we talk about it and go over it. We talk about what are ways we can support each other during the week, especially if one person's a bit more slammed than another. And those are my appointments now, where I think a lot of times what we do is those things that are important to us. Oh, it's family. They'll understand. We can move that by the wayside. Oh, I can just reschedule that appointment. And we follow what people are requesting of us instead. And I now do the reverse. Those things are sacred to me, and I try not to let anything come in the way of those.
Oh, that's brilliant. Nice. And do you do it on Sunday night?
I do it on Sunday night, as a matter of fact. Sometimes we have to move it to a Monday, but we really try to keep that appointment Sunday evening and go through the whole week. And
Yeah,
we schedule a month out too. We schedule date nights.
Oh, that's great. I wanted to be really specific about it because one thing I know about midlife women, we like planners.
Yeah.
But do we do the planners? We
Yes.
love some planners. But I just really wanted to know about it. I was imagining you on a Monday night. I like to do it on a Monday night. And so that was a very specific question. You also mentioned in your notes a little bit about menopause. So tell me how that is affecting your entrepreneurial life.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I just love your podcast, Suzy, because as I entered my 50s, I remember thinking to myself, gosh, there's so many things that we experience at this age. And like, I feel like people are not talking about these things. And
They're not.
they're not. And even some of my girlfriends we don't talk about some of these things. I remember when my kids went off to college and I thought, gosh, I think I did my job well and that's good. And that's why they're leaving and soaring. But gosh, it really hurts too, So I was like, why did people not warn me? I think that was my question. I was like, I
Yeah.
felt unprepared. Like people had not warned me about this. But at other points of life, like when you're pregnant or when you get married, everyone's trying to give you advice and
You
there's
know what?
books
That's
and
true. Except one time, I felt there was one other time that I wasn't warned.
what was
It's
that?
like you, I had a panic attack the night before my first one went to university.
Again.
It wasn't a full blown panic attack, but I felt panicky. It was breastfeeding. Breastfeeding, I thought
Oh,
I wasn't
yes.
fully prepared for that. Like technically, I knew what was going on, but I wasn't prepared for that little barracuda to be attaching to my breast, and it was painful for a little bit at the beginning, and that was very challenging to get your mind around that. And it wasn't something you could just slough off because it was like feeding your child.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the pressure that comes with that and sleep
Yes.
deprivation. And yeah, there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
Going
So I
back to
thought that
work
was
and
another.
pumping and
Oh my gosh, all of it.
yes.
But yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. But you're right. The menopause thing is such a surprise and it's so confusing and it's not that talked about. And we didn't grow up hearing about it either in our
Oh,
families with our mothers and our grandmothers. It just wasn't really talked about. So what are you noticing that's been a surprise?
some thinning hair, I'm like, okay, what can I do to like puff up the top here? It's getting a little flat and thin. I think I think the changes happened earlier than I thought they would. That whole perimenopause stage,
Mhm.
that took me by surprise. I think the slow weight gain that comes on, despite
Yes.
the fact that you are doing all the right things, you're
And the things
eating
that worked
right.
for years.
Yeah, exactly right. Like I literally was living off of like green smoothies for a while. I had gotten down to like that's all I was eating. And so I really had to educate myself. Of course, with my medical issues and the inflammation, that was the other reason. So fortunately for me, I feel like I actually did learn about menopause and tied that into what was going on with the inflammation, and how did I really need to eat and take care of myself. But yeah, I don't think that people are out there talking about that. And I know many women that have gone to their OBGYN and even have the experience of their doctor telling them, well, you just need to exercise more and eat less. And I think there's research out there now that is showing that that is not necessarily the case. But but yeah, that's a real thing too. And especially when you have an online business, right? I'm on camera doing videos. I do public speaking. And so, yeah, how I looked and how I felt, those are important pieces in my life. So menopause was definitely also a challenge. I'm sure it will continue to be, continue to be,
Well, I
but
have found in the last couple of years, there are so many more people with birth trends and stuff coming into this age with us.
yes.
And more people are starting to talk about it, but then there's still finding good information is always a challenge too. But it was a surprise. I agree with you. It was a surprise for me too. So the other thing I wanted to ask is how being an older woman, being somebody who's in their mid 50s, how is that for you as an entrepreneur? Are you noticing that is it relevant enough to take notice?
In the beginning, I thought it was. I think I've since changed my opinion. But yes, in the beginning, age definitely played into my decisions because I did have some of those same thoughts in terms of it's too late to start over, or I've put so many years into this. Like, what does that mean if I give all of that up now and go do something else?
Right.
Will my family support me? Will people think I'm crazy? I was also leaving a very good, high paying job in the middle of a pandemic. That sounded a little crazy at the time. So absolutely, I think my age came into it. Also, I think in terms of being an online business, I'm watching younger people out there doing their TikToks and their reels. And, I was only on Facebook. Like, I'm like, I don't know anything about this other stuff or the technology piece. Just, my kids are like, oh, you just do this, and I'm like, what? So there was a big learning curve. And I think my age played into it. But in time, my mind really changed about that. I think it really became more about those are all skills that you can learn if you even need to learn them. But if you do, you can. And that there was a lot more important things about me and what the message that I had and what I had to offer people. And again, focusing on the why is what really keeps me focused, I think, on the more important pieces and realizing that in that sense, my age many times provides a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of, wisdom that comes along with that and experience. And I also love that I have a lot of women this age who are attracted to working with me because I think they do feel like I understand some of the things that they're going through and talking about some of the things that other people aren't talking about. So I think it's needed. I think women our age need to know that there's people out there that can relate to them and help them as well.
It's different. It is definitely different being this age, and it's different running a business at this age, which is why I wanted to talk about it more on the show. Another thing you mentioned in your note is some of the financial pressures. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Originally, as I said, I really took a pay cut at that time. And I did so when I had one child getting married and two in college. And again, why am I doing this? But I was very fortunate that my family was actually very supportive of me. I think they had seen how depleted I had become. And
They must have seen that. And that scare you had was legit. Like that was really something that also other people could see exactly what was going on, literally with your eyes. My goodness.
Yep. And they saw the impact it was having, and it was having an impact on my relationship with my children and my husband. And I honestly don't even think I realized how much until I was out of it and looking back. And so, I just think that the finances, it's a real thing. And in addition to that, it takes some money to think about, okay, like I'm going to get a website, which by the way, for anybody listening, you do not have to do that right out of the gate. But, there were things like that I did and spent money on courses to learn, even my coaching. But I really had to get to a place where that didn't become an excuse or play into the fear even more. And my coach did help me with this because even though I'm a clinician and a coach, sometimes it's very hard to be objective about your own self and your own life.
Coaches totally need coaches. Thank God for coaches.
I always say everybody should have a coach. That's what I realize. I'm like, everybody should have a coach.
I agree.
Right? Yeah. And so for a while, I did continue my practice as I transitioned into working with a different client population, but I just really had to believe in abundance, that I was worthy and deserving of abundance. And I work on this a lot with my clients as well. That is a huge block, not feeling worthy and deserving. And so I had to believe that if I stayed the course, it would come. Consistency, of course, and improving my skills, but it couldn't be a short-term thing. It couldn't be, okay, if I'm not making money at the end of this year, I'm just going to give it all up. I mean, I had to know if I'm going to do this, I'm doing this for the long haul. And when you're doing that and you think that way, it doesn't feel as scary or as urgent. You're building a real foundation and building quality services. You know that the results are going to come. But it is a real factor for people to consider when starting a business.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot to it. And belief, you have to practice believing because it's kind of like I have no business believing this now, but you have to figure it out because without it, you're not able to move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is very different. And on the other hand, we are older and wiser, not just older. And we like to think that it's a separate part of our life. Like, oh, that job, I'm throwing it out and starting over, but you're not starting over. You're not 25. You've got decades of experience and wisdom to apply and to transfer to this new thing that you're doing. Yeah, it's so good. So lots of mindset work. What would you say the most surprising thing for you was about being a midlife woman over 50 and being an entrepreneur? Most surprising thing.
I think it was a surprise how much work it takes. Yet here I am, someone who has obviously a very strong work ethic, but I just think there's a lot of different pieces. You wear many different hats. Like I said, sometimes you're coaching, sometimes I'm speaking, sometimes I'm working on marketing. Sometimes I have to think about the financial pieces, such as how is it different, how I'm going to pay my taxes, supplies, and keeping track of everything. You wear so many different hats, but it's also the piece that I actually really love it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm never bored, and it's I love a challenge. So I also find it very rewarding, but it was surprising when I got into it. How, like I said, the learning curve, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
there's a lot I don't know. There's a lot I
Yeah.
know, but I'm
Well,
surprised at how much I don't know.
yeah, exactly. It's like we think, oh, I just need to learn the new skill of coaching, or I need to learn the
Yeah.
new skill of whatever. But there's the bigger learning curve, I think sometimes, is the skill of how to be an entrepreneur and all of the messy mindset narrative that has to be dealt with as a result of really dealing with visibility and really putting yourself out there and really dealing with sales and marketing and tech and all the elements. I had to come up with a specific thought to help me with tech because it was such a problem for me. I really believed I sucked at technology. That was my go-to thought all the time. And so I had to practice a thought that was actually quite effective for me. And it's, I'm learning to manage the tech I need for my business.
Yes.
So good.
Yes. Yes. Mindset, I would say, is one of the biggest pieces. Some of the clients that come to me are looking to start a coaching business. And almost always, I would say it makes the difference between someone who succeeds and someone who doesn't. And that is, their mindset, 100%.
Agreed.
Yep. And my saying, so whenever I catch myself thinking something that is limiting, like I have also made that comment about, oh, I'm just not good at technology, or with social media or something, I would say, well, I'm just not creative.
Ooh, yeah.
I learned really quickly to add 2 words to the end of that sentence, which is until now. So if I catch it coming and I say it, then I immediately follow it up with until now, meaning it can be different now, right?
Absolutely.
And absolutely, it's okay if I don't know something right now because I can learn what I need to know to make it happen. Yeah.
And if there's one thing we're good at, it's learning. I don't have any resistance to that idea. I am good at learning, but it's so fun to see, fun and funny, actually, to see my kids. I've got 3 boys in their 20s, to see the way they embrace new technology and glitches and things with the way I do. Now, even now, I've made vast improvements. I don't sweat anymore. I don't get panicky. I'm not worried I'm going to like press something and the whole thing, the floppy disk will explode and collapse and break and disappear and all the things. But just watching them, they have no hesitation, no risk. They press buttons, they try things, they click around, and it's so not the same experience for them. So it's fascinating to watch.
Absolutely.
It just,
Absolutely. I mean, I think that would be the other thing is as a clinician, I always knew that I had to be at a certain place in order to help a client with something. And coaching is the same way. I would never coach my client on something that I could not say to them with 100% integrity that I work on the same things or use the same tools. So I think that that was another important piece, but it really helped me with moving forward in my business. Mindset, gratitude. I actually think of 5 things I'm grateful for every single morning, even if it's just I woke up today, I'm still in my nice warm bed, whatever it might be. I start my day with gratitude. I do try very hard to one of the blocks for people is the brain. I use a lot of brain science in my coaching, but a lot of people don't realize that the brain is trying to keep them safe. So there's a lot of things that they go through that it's not them, it's their brain working the way that it's supposed to. But how do we work with that? And so one of the things I do is rather than focusing on all the things that have to get done, which can make you feel so overwhelmed, I always keep my thoughts on where am I trying to go and how am I going to feel when I get there? Who am I going to be when I get there? That motivates you. If you think about feeling confident and having that excitement, that's what's going to motivate you and pull you towards your vision versus all the steps that you need to take to get there, which that's the piece that if you wake up thinking about that in the morning, that's what's going to overwhelm you and send you back to bed. So
absolutely. So we have so much in common. I'm just saying, oh my gosh, we have so much in common. I did a gratitude Facebook Live yesterday, and I actually commented on the blooming flower that's behind me that
I can see it.
Yeah, you can see it. I know, listener, you can't see it, but I am very tuned in to what's blooming in my house, and I get very excited about it. So I've got one little anthurium there blooming away, and it didn't go without being noticed. And I thought that's a small thing I can be grateful for right now. Look, I'm looking at it right all the time in Zoom when it's behind me. And when I'm in this little space, it's really, really good. So totally agree with you. So tell us, Mary, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, if they would like to get in touch with me, the website is just starcitycoaching.com. And they can follow me there, sign up for my weekly newsletter if they would like to.
So good. Mary, thank you so much for taking the time from your day and sharing all of this good stuff. I really appreciate how committed you are to helping women realize that they really can change whatever their age. I totally love what you're doing. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Suzy. This has been great.
Amazing. Well, that is it for now. If you're listening and loving what you hear, please like and subscribe. Reviews are great too and much appreciated. And if you're a woman in the middle who's 50 or over and an entrepreneur and would like to come on the show too, please go to www.midlifeinterviews.com and fill out an application. We'd love to have you on to share your story. Thanks so much for listening. It is never too late to put yourself on your agenda. I'm Suzy Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you again soon. Now, real quick before we say goodbye, if you are connecting with this show, I'd love to invite you to a happiness breakthrough coaching session. It's my laser-focused coaching call that will help you get clear about what's getting in your way as a woman in the middle entrepreneur and confident about your next steps to more happiness in your next chapter. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. Talk to you soon.